Good evening and welcome everyone. For those of you who don't know me, or if you haven't had a chance to meet yet, let me share a little bit about my background. I have had the honor of serving as your mayor for a little over a year now, but my commitment to Wayzata spans nearly 20 years in local government and community leadership roles, including 2 terms on the Wayzata City Council. Outside of City Hall, I wear a few different hats. I serve as the Vice President of Marketing in the aerospace industry at a company called Earth Daily, where we own and operate a network of satellites. And I'm also a small business owner right here in Wayzata as a passive owner of Wanani Surf and Paddle. But most important role for me at home, my wife, Kristen, and I are proud to have raised our 2 children, Walker and Paige, in this incredible community. And I'm deeply invested in ensuring Wayzata remains a wonderful place to live, work, and play for their generations and beyond. A few weeks ago, during one of my monthly Mayor Muni meetups, these are monthly sessions that I hold at the Wayzata Bar and Grill where all residents are welcome for a one-on-one with the mayor. I was chatting with a resident over a drink, and we were talking about the incredible energy around town lately. The success of our lakeside restaurants, the new public spaces, the sheer number of people wanting to be here. And this resident looked me right in the eye and said, "Mayor, it's a blessing that everyone wants to be in Wayzata, but sometimes that blessing feels like a headache." They were talking about the traffic, the noise, and the growing pains that come with being an emerging destination. I think that conversation perfectly captures where we are right now. We're standing right at the intersection of challenges and opportunities. And if you think about it, local government is where the reality of everyday life meets the vision of tomorrow. A successful city needs to be big enough to matter, but small enough to be nimble and creative on how we solve problems. In my view, a city's job isn't just to fix what's broken today, it's to build a stage for a future. And that's exactly what we're doing here in Wayzata. We're embracing our growth as a massive opportunity while actively tackling the nuisance challenges it brings with for nimble, creative, and firm solutions. And as I stand before you today, reflecting on our progress over the last year, I'm proud to report that the state of our city remains strong. So I'm going to cover the following topics tonight to give you a clear picture of where we stand and where we're headed. 1, leadership transitions, navigating our season of renewal at City Hall. 2nd, a financial update, including our 2026 budget, reflecting on the levy and the upcoming school referendum. Quickly look back at our 2025 accomplishments, highlighting critical investment in public safety, fire, and our park system, and then looking ahead for development updates, infrastructure, and our guiding principles for the future. And as I stand before you today reflecting on our progress over the last year, I'm proud to report, again, the city remains strong. So governance is a team sport, and I want to recognize the stewards of the city who I sit alongside in this effort. On the council with me are Molly McDonald, Alex Plekish, Ken Sorensen, and more recently with the departure towards the end of last year of Jeff Parkhill, we had Dan Cook rejoining the council via an appointment. Welcome back, Dan, and thank you to all of you for your wisdom and your hard work. And then to the team that turns policy into reality, our department heads, Aurora Yeager in administration, Mike Kelly at Public Works, Pete Zimmerman in Finance, Kathy Learvig, our City Clerk, and Alex Sharp, our Community Development Director. I'd also like to recognize Chief Jamie Baker from Wayzata Police and Chief Kevin Klaprick leading our fire department. And last but not least, both Jeff Petrini and Kevin Castellano who manage our Wayzata Bar and Grill and Wayzata Wine and Spirits. Their work builds a stage for our future, and it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens because of these dedicated folks and their staff who show up every day to serve this city. So let's unpack these things a little bit. Leadership transition and change. As 2025 and 2026 have been years of significant transition for Wayzata, we're in a season of renewal. We said goodbye to long-standing city manager Jeff Dahl and thanked him for his service, while welcoming in a new era of leadership. We saw the departure of council member Parkhill and the appointment of Dan Cook. In 2025, we swore in a new police chief leading our public safety efforts. And another historic milestone for 2025 is for this calendar year, we budgeted for and will be hiring our first ever full-time fire chief, creating a professional backbone for our fire service. You probably know that longstanding, or maybe do not know, that our longstanding Fire Chief Kevin Klappert has been serving in a part-time capacity for a number of years. So now we're building a full-time position and building around that. We also welcomed in 2025 a new finance manager in Pete Zimmerman and a new director of community development, Alex Sharp. And then more recently, for the most exciting news of the night, after a national search that resulted in a strong slate of both internal and external candidates earlier last week, the City Council, with the vital support of our designated community employee panels, met with our finalists. Following this rigorous process, I'm proud to announce that Aurora Yeager has been selected as our next city manager. Please join me in congratulating her and welcoming her into this new role. Change can be unsettling, but in this case, it represents evolution. We're bringing in fresh energy to tackle modern challenges. But of course, even the best leadership team needs resources to turn policy into reality. That brings us to the fuel for our city, i.e. our budget. So this year, we prioritized operational excellence, which means we focused on doing more by leveraging efficiency. It's about making difficult trade-off decisions so we can prioritize the critical investment in public safety, both police and fire, to attract and retain top personnel and invest in our equipment. And I'm pleased to report that we kept the levy increased to the lowest percentage of the last 5 years, passing a 4.9% increase for 2026. And let's look at what this means by the numbers. So this table represents sort of the size and scale of Wayzata. Population of roughly 4,500. We have 105 full-time employees, and at full-time at peak seasonally, we surged to about 200 employees. If you look at all of our funds, our consolidated funds, which means our general fund, all of our enterprise, liquor, water, sewer, all of that, rolls up to roughly $23.12 million. So 23.12, that's down from last year at 24.03. Our general fund ticked up from 25 to 26, from 9.18 million to 9.84 million. Our taxable market value of the entire city is totaling 3.6 billion. So for our little tiny hamlet, we've gone from a taxable market value of last year of 3.39 billion to this year at 3.6 billion, which is comparable to many cities of the size of 25 or 30,000. So it just speaks to the high value of our property. And then our property tax itself went up from the levy. The property tax levy went up from 6.9 million to 7.2 million. And that reflects a 70-30 split, 70% to residential properties in terms of contributions to our tax base versus 30% commercial. So then the next logical question is, how are my dollars spent? This schematic here outlays of every property tax dollar collected, where does it go? So I'm going to tick through each of these. 37% to the school, 37% to Hennepin County, 19% to the city of Wayzata, and 7% to other jurisdictions such as the Met Council. Let's unpack each of these. From last year to this year, the school relative share of your property tax went down from 39% to 37%. And this represents a levy increase of 6.13% increase based on a school budget of $311 million annually. There is, however, it's a little bit misleading because there's a planned referendum this year, which I'll unpack and discuss in a little bit. The county portion of your tax bill went up from 35% to 37% year over year. And this represents a percentage levy increase of 7.79% based on an overall county budget, Hennepin County budget, for the entire county of $3.15 billion. Wayzata's portion of your property tax remained flat at 19%. And as I stated earlier, it represents a levy increase of 4.9% based on a budget of $9.8 million and consolidated roll-up budget across all of our enterprises of $23.1 million. And lastly, the other jurisdictions reflect 7% of every property tax dollar collected. This is really important to remember that only 19% or 19 cents of every dollar collected actually stays here in Wayzata. The rest goes to other tax jurisdictions. Next, how are our property taxes spent locally here in Wayzata? So I'm going to tick off, from left to right on the wheel here. Our capital outlay was down 1 percentage point from 9% to 8% of our spend. Fire went up 2%, rising from 4% of our budget to 6% of our budget. And that went to a new fire truck and equipment, increasing our pension or retirement payments for our fire personnel, and then budgeting for our first full-time fire chief and increasing our wages. Community development was flat at 6%, at 7% rather. Parks was flat at 11%. Public works was down from 11% to 10%. And admin remained flat at 21%, and police flat at 36%. So the big changes, again, were capital outlay was down from 9% to 8%. Fire expenditures were up from 4% to 6%. And the balance was flat. So one of the largest single portions of your property tax, as I stated earlier, 37% to be specific, goes towards our schools. And education is a massive driver of why families choose to move here and stay here. And speaking of our schools, let's unpack a discussion about a critical decision that will impact this portion of your taxes. As Wayzata continues to be a highly desirable place to live, we are experiencing the realities of a growing student population. And on April 14th, Wayzata Public Schools will ask voters to consider a 3-question referendum to address these needs. In total, we're being asked to approve a spend of $561 million investment in our schools. And that comes in 3 components. One is renewal of an existing technology levy of $6.5 million per year, going out 10 years for $65 million. So this is a renewal, so it doesn't require new tax dollars, but it's an extension of that spend. Second would be the new and improved learning spaces for an elementary school, middle school, in significant additions to our high school improvements. That second lever is a total spend of $465 million. And then third, if the community supports option 2 for that $465 million, you're asked to affirm a third investment, which is for a new 8-lane swimming pool at the high school for a total of $31 million. That request will only pass if item 2 passes. So all in all, that's $561 million. So for a home value, average value of $650,000, it's $360 per year. Increased taxes are $33 a month. We all know that the average house price in Wayzata is a little higher than that. So for a Wayzata home of about $1 million, it would be closer to $60 a month or $720 per year. So I encourage you all to get informed about this referendum, to ask questions, go to the district website, and certainly show up and vote on or before April 14th. Next, I'm going to cover some of our accomplishments for 2025. Whether it's investing in our schools or investing in our city services, our goal is always to manage growth responsibly. And our accomplishments are many this year. Earlier, I shared a story from the Muni Meetup about the blessings and headaches of Wayzata's popularity. As our lakeside restaurants thrive and our new public spaces draw crowds, we have begun to experience that more people, more problems impact, specifically nuisance issues like speeding and exhibition driving, e-bikes to name a few. Addressing this has been a top priority for the city and for our police department. And let me highlight now how police and fire have stepped up this challenge over the past year. So, as I stated earlier, we have a new police chief, Chief Baker. We also swore in our new deputy police chief, Brad Shaner, who replaced Chief Baker. So we have a new chief and deputy chief. We have a new sergeant on the force, Kyle Kirshner, who then replaced Bad's position with 1 open sergeant position. We hired 2 new officers and 3 community service officers. So that means on our police force, we have 18 sworn officers, 3 CSOs, and 2 record staff. And as I stated earlier, as we continue to grow, especially to the success of our lakeside restaurants, we are experiencing some of these nuisance issues. And that resulted in us focusing on enhancing our ordinances and enforcement and related fines to address these issues like speed, exhibition driving, and e-bikes. I'm just calling out a couple examples here. So if you are caught exhibition driving in Wayzata for your second offense, it is now a mandatory court appearance and up to $1,000 fine and up to 90 days jail time. And second, e-bikes. We passed an ordinance that allows or requires our juveniles to wear helmets, which gives another reason for our police to engage with our younger e-bike riders to remind them about proper use and such. And so those are just two quick examples of things that we've changed on our ordinances, penalties, and enforcement to address these more people, more problems issues. I'd also like to remind everyone that we also police Long Lake, and that contract will be up in 2028, which is just right around the corner. Moving along to fire now. We funded our first full-time fire chief to be put in place in the second quarter of this year. We enhanced contributions to our retirement fund for each of our firefighters, changing our vesting schedule to align with the current firefighter profile. Basically, we shortened the vesting schedule to try to incent more people to come and stay. We increased our wages, and those three things, I think, will impact dramatically our ability to attract and retain talent on our fire service. Just to note how we've grown over time, in 2025, we experienced 385 calls, which is a 36% increase over 2023. And last but not least, there's a picture on the screen here of our brand new ladder truck. And as we secured financing for this new piece of important equipment, we affirmed our AAA bond rating. And I want to talk a little bit about the importance of that AAA bond rating. Fiscal discipline remains a central focus of our local governance here in Wayzata. This commitment was recently demonstrated again when we financed this new ladder truck. And during this process, the independent credit agencies evaluated our finance and reaffirmed the city's AAA bond rating. And while the ladder truck is our latest example, it highlights our broader financial philosophy, which is we make strategic choices to use debt judiciously, reserving it for significant long-term investments in Wayzata's future. And a AAA bond rating is the highest possible municipal credit grade, reflecting strong governance, balanced budgets, and healthy reserves. When we choose to finance these major long-term needs, maintaining this top-tier rating directly benefits the community in several measurable ways. First, lower borrowing costs. The city qualifies for the lowest available interest rates to finance these capital projects, essential equipment and infrastructure. That reduces our total expenditures. Those favorable terms significantly reduce the total interest paid over the life of any long-term note or community investment. And it gives us some chance for budget efficiency. That lower debt payment and debt service frees more of the city's operating budget for ongoing municipal services and maintenance. By prioritizing fiscal discipline, we ensure that Wayzata can continue to responsibly fund necessary long-term upgrades while minimizing the financial burden on our taxpayers. Next, I'd like to talk about the most significant public improvement that was made in 2025, which is enhancements to the public space at Klaprock Park. This major investment, which we saved for the last 10 years, didn't use any debt to do this, paid cash, was a major investment in one of our most popular parks, Klaprock. We expanded the warming house significantly in size, making it more usable as a year-round asset, including public access to restrooms year-round, which is not the case today. We added a new parking area so that you make it easier for ADA accessibility for drop-off and pickup down to the park in a safer way. And the field itself was actually leveled and additional drainage was placed in the field so that we've experienced it's a pretty marshy piece of land. So having that drainage makes it more usable in the summer months and the winter months because it's easier to flood in an even way and freeze more evenly. So that's exciting. We also added a brand new playground area, significant upgrade there. And a community space for using the indoor and outdoor space for things like a community gathering. So this is super exciting and one of our most used public parks that had this significant multi-million-dollar investment over the last year. That is now substantially complete. We just finished our first year of skating and looking forward to the spring and summer use of our new playground and outdoor spaces and our indoor space. Also, you may have noticed in 2025, the Lake Walk was completed for Wayzata. There was some tuning that needed to happen on that Lake Walk, and in 2025, we did some tuning to the Lake Walk, including adding the step downs, which allow you to walk from the Lake Walk and put your toes in the water, step down to the water. We improved our dockage for transient docks. There was some issues with how we had originally set up transient storage in and out, and so we've done some upgrades there. And then we also added marine grade electricity to both of our transient slip areas, which is all a nice, shall we say, a little bit of polish placed on the Lake Walk. Also, I'm pleased to announce another initiative that we started in 2025. A group of local residents and business owners stepped forward to help us with the downtown corridor streetscape of flowers and plantings. So literally all along Lake Street, upgrading the quality, the quantity, and the substance of our plantings, which have taken some evolution since we built Panaway now for 3 years. So this is a public-private partnership. It's a beautiful example of citizens showing up with their time, treasure, and talent to partner with the city to make an improvement. So starting this summer and spring and into next year, you should see some nice streetscape improvements of our flower and landscaping in our downtown core along Lake Street. So upgrading our parks and beautifying the downtown corridor are immediate visible improvements we can all enjoy today. But our job as city stewards requires us to look much further down the road. We are currently taking a 25-year look at our space needs to ensure our public facilities, public safety facilities and infrastructure can handle the future. And this brings us to our outlook. To maintain our operational excellence and to keep our tax base strong, we have to strategically diversify our revenue and manage development responsibly. We have several properties in transition right now, and I want to give you a quick update on where those stand. But again, our core tenets are to diversify revenue, operation excellence, and sustain community character. That's what our guiding principles are for the future. Let's unpack diversifying revenue. As I stated earlier, Wayzata's needs and how the city is being used has changed dramatically over the last 10 years. We have a lot of visitors coming to town that use our infrastructure, that have impact on our public safety. And as our community has changed with these more visitors and other uses of our community infrastructure, we're laser focused on reducing the dependency on property tax revenue from our residents and commercial landowners as the primary way to fund things. And so some of the things that we're exploring are shared service. So we've got a couple examples: shared service for IT with other adjacent communities. We all have the same needs for IT and things like training for fire. So we've got some shared service activity going on for fire training with our neighbors to the west. We are again going to ask the legislature to grant us the right to implement a local sales tax around food and beverage. More than 75% of the users of our restaurants actually are visitors. And so that's an easy way to bring in some revenue to offset property taxes. We'll continue to advocate for state bonding and grants. Over the last 10 years, we've had some great success of over $5 million of grants and bonding coming into the city. We're looking for some special tax legislation regarding our tax increment finance districts for redevelopment that make more projects available to use that investment back in our community. TIF is one of the few ways that we can keep investment in our community without sharing it to the other tax jurisdictions. So we're looking for some help with some special legislation. I was actually out at the Capitol a week or so ago testifying with Administrator Yeager on asking the legislators for just that. We also are going to try to diversify our park dedication fees and our franchise fees to find different ways to fund our parks. Primarily, our parks historically have been funded by subdivision fees, and as less and less land is available to subdivide, that funding source has gone down significantly over the years. So we're looking at user-based fees or franchise or park dedication fees as a way to offset that, as a way to, again, reduce the dependency on property tax as the primary funding source. To be specific, it's more than 70% of roughly 68.6% to be exact of the general fund comes from property taxes. So then next, I'm going to talk about operational excellence. So we talked about shared service. Public safety, improving retention, focused on that pay for police and fire, both base pay, retention, retirement, to make sure that we attract and retain talent. We've put a concerted effort in two-way communication with our community. Not everyone feels comfortable coming to City Hall, and sometimes it's difficult for folks to do that. So last year, we began bringing our council meetings out into the community. We did 2 of them last year. We're going to do at least 2 to 3 more this year, where we bring the council and city leadership out into the community, making it easy for us to be seen and for you to access and give us feedback. We're going to evaluate our long-term facility needs for police and fire. Just so you know, I mean, the police department is greatly underserved today. We've got several female police officers and only 1 locker room. We're at about 25% of the long-term capacity that we need for police and fire. So this is a long ball activity that the council and city administration are leaning into to try to make sure that our future needs are met. And this is an expensive and very expensive heavy lift. So we got to start now to make sure that we both understand the needs, but also have the proper funding in place so that we're not borrowing significant amount of money for this investment in long-term infrastructure. Lastly, I'd like to note that you may note there's a park and ride on Barrie and Wayzata Boulevard, that when we had a greater number of bus service, that parking lot was more utilized. It is now greatly underutilized. So we've started conversations with the Met Council on repurposing that parcel of land so that it has a higher and better use than just transit. Transit won't go away. For example, it might be an appropriate location to expand our public safety facilities. So next, we're going to unpack the developments around town. People often want to understand what's going on in development and redevelopment. So I'm just going to tick off east to west some updates on our major development and redevelopment projects. I'm going to start to the west in the upper quadrant here, upper left quadrant, what was formerly known as Moments of Wayzata, which was going to be a senior living facility. That's on just next to Redeemer Lutheran Church on Wayzata Boulevard, just west of Wayzata Community Church. That property has changed hands and is no longer planned to be a senior living facility. We don't have the intended use yet, but no longer is the Moments going to move forward. Moving down to Lake Street, what's known as the Burnett Building, or the Zitzloff Project at 201 Lake Street, Westway Condominiums, is on hold due to financing. So they intend to break ground as soon as they can, and as soon as they can get their financing sorted out. Across the street on Lake Street is the TCF building, or what's known as the TCF building at 200 Lake Street. That unfortunately is tied up in some litigation at the moment, and we're waiting for the court to render their opinion on our dispute with the developer. And hopefully once that's resolved, we can begin moving forward on that property as well. Moving further east along Lake Street, the Karish building, which is that center block. This was commonly known in the community as the Caribou building, where Caribou Coffee used to have its lake cafe. That has been completed. I believe the financial services tenant is taking the primary nature of that building, and then the balance of it is going to be for street retail. Moving further to the east and up Superior Boulevard, and at the corner of Superior and Wayzata Boulevard is the Wells Fargo project that's been on construction now for over a year at 900 Wayzata Boulevard. That is substantially complete. I recently met with the development group, and they are more than 70% pre-leased for their market rate rental townhomes and apartments, which is exciting news. Moving up Superior now back onto Wayzata Boulevard, there's an abandoned gas station just past that intersection of Superior and Lake next to the Edina Realty building. That was recently improved for a boutique Lamborghini dealership. That's at the address of 1022 and 1042 Wayzata Boulevard. They plan construction of that site later this year. And lastly, along the frontage road of 394 on the south side, there was another senior living facility being planned called Harbors of Wayzata, which was a 40-unit, 2-story assisted living facility at 1549 through 15429 Wayzata Boulevard and 1405 Holdridge Terrace. That is also on hold for financing reasons. So that just gives you a quick preview of development and redevelopment. Managing these developments project is only half the battle. We also have to navigate how people actually get to and from our city. And you may already have noticed the significant amount of road work happening on 394 to the east of us, closer to downtown Minneapolis. Well, I want to make sure everyone is aware that that project is moving east into Wayzata, closer to us. And I'm going to unpack that construction project here now. So basically, starting in April through fall, you're going to have the entire roadway of 394-12 repaved from 494 all the way to 101 Central Avenue North. And then all of the on and off ramps from each of those tributaries that go on to 494, 394, and 12. That's the big one. In addition, west of 101, all the way up to Shoreline Drive, that will be a complete rebuild of 394-12. So not just a repavement, but it's going to be lifted up and put back down, including lighting, drainage, access, utilities. So it's going to be a very significant project that's going to be incredibly disruptive. All along this corridor are 20 ramps throughout this project area. We all know that road construction is a huge headache, but these updates are a vital investment totaling $50 million in just this stretch of 394 Highway 12. It's really about our community's long-term mobility. And again, as I stated, it's starting in April and lasting through the fall. Highway 12 will see continuous lane reductions between Shoreline Drive to the west and 494. And to keep our daily commutes as smooth as possible, crews will use a movable barrier system to shift lanes and accommodate both morning and evening rush hour traffic. But please plan ahead for phased ramp closures at Shoreline Drive, Central Avenue, and 494. From late April to midsummer, the westbound ramps will be closed, and once those reopen midsummer, the eastbound ramps will close through the remainder of the fall. I guess one word for all of this, ouch. And so, road construction is never easy. This is a necessary thing that we're going to have to, go through together. But I think in the end, it'll be a marked improvement, but it'll be a rough summer. It'll have impacts to our residents and our businesses. But I wanted to make sure you had a strong heads up. There's more information on the city's website, which will click through to the project development site at the Minnesota Department of Transportation. So other city initiatives that we're focused on in 25 and 26 is, again, I talked about this earlier, it's going to be a really critical part of what we do this next year, is to deeply unpack what our long-term needs for public safety are. So that's both fire and police, our buildings, whether we remodel here or we expand to another location. It's something that we need to do to make sure that those are viable in the long term. Police is probably the most underserved at this point. Our police department didn't contemplate policing two cities and to the size and scale that we are today. Police and fire, as more needs for environmental assessment, for use of equipment has changed, we got to modernize our facilities to be on par with current standards and current needs. Other things that we're focused on, we did pass in 25, which goes into effect here on March 31st, a complete ban to short-term rentals, which means that we no longer allow Airbnb and VRBO in town, so that's a significant change. So those properties will have to be converted to long-term rental. And then, as I mentioned earlier, a renewed commitment to community engagement. In addition to the Mayor Muni meetups I do once a month, personally, bringing those council meetings and city leadership out into the community are gonna be important. Next is Panaway. So future phases of Panaway are planned. The most likely project element to come forward first based on funding is the rehabilitation of the Section Foreman's House into a Lakeshore Learning Center. You can see on the left the existing conditions to the planned conditions. So this adaptive reuse of the Section Foreman's House, which is on the National Registry of Historic Places, will provide a new gathering space for indoor and outdoor classrooms. And so if we're very close on fundraising, just a few more dollars coming in will allow us to bring this forward. And then beyond that, other project elements will come forward as funding becomes available. So lastly, I'd like to talk about my personal principles for governance. These are my four-way areas of focus on how I see local government. One is fiscal responsibility that we talked about quite extensively tonight. Second is continued investment in public safety. Third is maintaining local control. Once you give up local services to the county and other places, it's incredibly hard to get it back. And so our residents have an high expectation for services and for delivery. So like as an example, we let go of assessing a few years ago and let that go to the county. My personal view is that was a mistake. And I'd like to maintain local control of all those assessable services, including potentially bringing assessing back under local control. And then lastly, community engagement. These 4 pillars are the ways that I think about guiding principles to govern locally. And it's how I show up every day and how I advocate as one voice on the council in these areas. Lastly, I guess I'd like to talk about some closing remarks. The infrastructure work coming our way on 394 and the continued evolution of Panaway, the modernization of our fire and police departments, and the careful selection of our new city manager, Aurora Yeager, none of these are just line items on a project plan. They are the structural planks of the stage we are building for the next generation. At another most recent Muni Mayor meetup, a longtime resident reminded me that the decisions we make today won't be just judged by us, but by our kids. When I look at my kids, I'm reminded that the work we do, the balancing strict fiscal discipline with necessary investments, preserving our historic charm while adapting to our modern demands is what ensures Wayzata will still be the jewel of the lake when they are standing in our shoes in the future. We have faced our fair share of transition this last year and growing pains this past year, but communities thrive when they embrace a season of renewal instead of shrinking from it, and I believe we're standing tall. We have built a solid foundation over this past year because of our shared vision, the incredible dedication of our city staff and our council, and our strict fiscal discipline. The state of our city remains strong and we're ready for the future. I thank you for your time this evening, your trust and your commitment to making Wayzata the incredible city that it is. Thank you very much.